I've worked enough product launches to know things never go exactly to plan, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what I saw on that screen in Austin. It was a warm September evening, the kind where the hotel lobby still clung to the day's heat, and the hum of conversation never dipped below a low buzz. We were staying at the Caruth Hotel downtown, a sleek, mid-century modern spot our firm had used for other events. Clean lines, brass accents, overpriced cocktails. The usual corporate theater. The product launch was Mia's baby. She'd spent the last 6 months driving it like her life depended on it. I'd seen her pour herself into it. Late nights, early flights, midnight Zoom calls with developers who barely spoke English but responded quickly when she pushed hard enough. She thrives on that energy, always has. And tonight, she looked every bit the part. Berg *NDY dress that hit just above the knee. Matte lipstick, hair pinned back with surgical precision. Her nails matched the dress, deep and glossy. She wore the thick black-rimmed glasses she reserves for high-visibility meetings, the ones with the subtle gold branding on the temple that always seemed to catch the light at just the right angle. I'd always been proud of her in moments like this. Even as her husband, there were times I felt like I was watching from the audience, admiring the way she commanded a room. You don't marry someone like Mia without knowing they're going to outshine you sometimes. That never bothered me. Until now. The room was filled with clients and partners. Everyone held a drink, something sparkling or bitter or both. The lighting was dim but intentional, making the AV screen up front pop like a beacon. I stood near the back, close to the bar, nursing a glass of still water with a lime wedge I hadn't asked for. I wasn't working the event. I was just the spouse tonight. Mia had introduced me earlier to some folks, casually, warmly, but notably without the word husband. Just, this is Evan. That detail would gnaw at me later. The keynote was supposed to start at 7:30. At 7:28, as people settled into place, some music faded, and the projector flickered to life. A bit of awkward laughter filled the room. Something had clearly gone wrong. Instead of the title slide or a brand logo, an image had popped up that didn't belong. It was a photo. Grainy, like it had been taken hastily or on an older phone. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The screen showed a hotel room bathroom. It wasn't immediately obvious which hotel it was, but something about it nagged at me. The marble countertop, the pattern, the angle of the wall mirror. Then I saw her, Mia. She was in the photo, standing at the sink. Her back to the mirror, her head turned slightly, mid-laugh or smile. It was hard to tell. But it was her. The dress was unmistakable. The same Berg *NDY one she had on right now. The same glasses. The same nail color. Her wristwatch was visible, a Cartier I gave her for her 35th. Everything about the photo screamed present tense. Then I noticed the reflection in the mirror. My stomach turned cold. A man, standing behind her. Close. Too close for coincidence. His face was mostly obscured. Just a jawline, part of a shoulder, a shirt slightly unbuttoned. But it didn't matter. The implication was enough. I blinked. Surely I was seeing this wrong. I looked around, scanning the faces in the crowd to see if anyone else had noticed. Some people had squinted at the screen. A few laughed, probably assuming it was a tech hiccup or a joke. I caught one woman elbow her colleague, whisper something. But no one said anything. No one panicked. No one screamed. Except me internally. Then I saw the timestamp on the photo in the bottom corner. My heart skipped. Tonight. This exact date. Not just the day, this hour. The image was taken less than 90 minutes ago. Before I could even process it, Mia stepped forward. Cool as ever. She took the mic from the stand and smiled like nothing had happened. Well, she said, voice smooth as silk, it wouldn't be a launch without a technical hiccup, right? Some scattered laughter. Nervous. Relieved. Our AV crew appears to have pulled from a personal album instead of the presentation deck, she added lightly, adjusting her glasses. Apologies for the surprise preview of my hotel bathroom. Nothing to see there, folks. She flashed a look to the tech table in the corner, and a young man in a headset scrambled like he'd just been handed a live grenade. Seconds later, the screen went dark. The room exhaled. Then she continued, flawlessly, welcoming everyone, diving into metrics, projections, milestones, like it never happened. I watched her the whole time. She didn't flinch. Not once. Her voice stayed steady. She even made a callback joke about the photo incident later in her pitch, earning some easy laughter. And just like that, the room moved on. But I didn't, because I had stood in that exact hotel bathroom earlier that evening. I remembered the countertop because I'd set my razor there after unpacking. I remembered the glasses because she left them beside my deodorant and I moved them. I remembered the scent of her perfume in that tiny space, sweet and heavy and deliberate. And now I remembered that she'd left to check in with the venue team about an hour before that photo was taken. It wasn't just some glitch or mistimed photo upload. That image was real. The metadata told me everything I needed to know. But Mia deflected, masterfully. She twisted it into a joke, a throwaway mishap, a hiccup to brush off. She made it social lubricant, and everyone drank it. I wanted to ask her about it. Right then. Right after the applause died down and the drinks were refilled. But I didn't. Instead, I stood in the back, watching her work the room, shake hands, kiss cheeks, close her MacBook with a satisfied little click. People congratulated her. Someone called her a legend for how she handled the AV blip. I watched her thank them all with that same glowing smile I'd fallen in love with years ago. And I realized something chilling. She'd already built the story. She'd already spun the thread before anyone could catch it. Before I could catch it. It wasn't just that she had an explanation. It's that she knew exactly how to redirect the spotlight before it ever got to her. And I started to wonder how many other moments she'd done the same thing without me noticing. That night in Austin didn't leave me. Not the way it should have if her story had been true. I replayed it over and over in my mind while I lay awake in the hotel bed next to her. The soft hum of the minibar fridge like a clock ticking down to something I couldn't yet name. Mia slept soundly. No tension in her breathing. No flicker of unease. Meanwhile, I stared at the ceiling like it owed me an answer. By the time we got back to San Diego, the image had burned itself into my memory. Down to the way the reflection cut off just above the man's eyes. Mia didn't bring it up again. Not in the car to the airport, not during the flight, not after we landed. It was as if she knew ignoring it would make it my problem to carry. And it did. But what really got to me wasn't the image itself. It was what it unlocked. Once I saw it, I couldn't stop seeing everything else. Like how, in the last 3 months, she'd started going on off-sites that never showed up in her calendar. And when I asked, casually just trying to sync schedules, she'd smile and say, "Oh, it's just last minute, not worth updating." That wasn't like her. Mia's calendar used to run tighter than air traffic control. Then the location sharing stopped. One day it just wasn't there anymore. I noticed when I was trying to meet her for lunch and couldn't pull up her ETA. I texted her, "Weird, your location's off." And she replied 2 hours later with, "Oh huh, must have updated my privacy settings. I'll fix it later." She never did. And the phone. That was new too. She used to leave it face up on the counter while we cooked or watched Netflix, sometimes forgetting where she left it. Lately, though, it was always in her hand, face down or tucked into a bag. And there was a new passcode, one I never saw her enter. The first time I noticed her coming home late wearing that heavy amber perfume. It caught me off guard. I only recognized it because it wasn't hers. At least, not the one she used around me. This one was denser, spicier. The kind you dab on before a night out with someone who matters in a way that's not logistical or professional. I told myself it didn't mean anything. People change scents. People get busy. But then there were the receipts. One night while she showered, I grabbed a stack of envelopes from the counter, thinking they were bills. One of them was a folded receipt from a boutique I didn't recognize. 2 pairs of shoes. 2 very different sizes. Both women's. Different brands. Different styles. Why buy 2 at once if you're shopping for yourself? The receipt was nearly 2 weeks old. I found another a few days later. Lingerie, wrapped in tissue paper, still untouched in the closet. Not in her drawer. Not folded away. just tucked into the back like it hadn't found a moment to be worn. She'd been showering more, too. Not the rushed 5-minute rinses we both took after long days, but long, steamy ones late at night, even when she wasn't working out or getting in from the gym. Some nights, she'd come home, barely speak, then disappear upstairs and turn the fan on to full blast. It started feeling like we were roommates who occasionally exchanged updates about the internet bill or whose turn it was to grab groceries. Conversations about moving to a bigger place, something we'd once daydreamed about over coffee, fizzled into maybe next year limbo. The idea of having kids, something we had agreed to revisit by spring, now made her shift uncomfortably. "Let's not rush things," she said once, eyes on her phone. "We're just getting back into a groove." A groove. That's what she called it. But I'd already noticed she introduced me differently now. Not my husband. Just Evan. As if that detail had become optional. The last straw came from the car. One night, I went to move her car so I could pull mine into the garage. It was late. She was already asleep upstairs. I slid into the driver's seat and turned the ignition, and felt the seat lurch forward, hugging my knees. She always kept her settings saved to position 2 on the memory panel. I was 1. That's how we kept it. But when I checked the recall button, both memory settings had been changed. Both new. Both recently saved. Hers was further back than usual. Whoever sat there last had longer legs. I just sat there, staring at the dashboard, listening to the low hum of the engine, that quiet pulsing of something I didn't want to say out loud yet. I didn't confront her. Not then. Not yet. Because I needed more than suspicion. I needed something irrefutable. Something that couldn't be spun into, "It's not what it looks like." So I started paying attention. I looked through our shared ride app account. She'd forgotten I still had access. Several recent charges caught my eye, pickup and drop-off locations nowhere near her office or our home. One in particular stood out. A late-night drop-off at an address across town. A high-rise apartment building. The timestamp was 11:12 p.m. She told me she was working late that night. Said she was staying at the office to finish a pitch. I checked the date. 3 days after the Austin launch. She'd come home that night, cheeks flushed, saying the meeting had gone long, that she'd had 2 glasses of wine and didn't want to drive. She'd laughed, called it boring as hell, then curled up next to me on the couch and fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. And I'd believed her. I shouldn't have. Not then. Not after everything I'd started to see. But that's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't hit like thunder. It drips. Slowly. Until you look around one day and realize the floor's been flooding beneath you the whole time. I still hadn't asked her about the photo. Part of me didn't want to hear the lie. Part of me still hoped I was wrong. That it was a misunderstanding. An illusion of timing and shadows and marble countertops. But deep down I knew. That night in Austin wasn't an anomaly. It was a crack. A reveal. A curtain tugged just slightly enough for the light to hit what had always been standing in the wings. And now that I'd seen it, I couldn't unsee it. I always thought if I ever caught someone cheating, it would come with fireworks. Some big explosive moment. Raised voices, broken dishes, that instant where everything goes still before it blows up. But the truth? When it finally happened, when the proof was no longer something I had to suspect or piece together, it came quiet. Still. Awful in its calmness. It was a Thursday afternoon. Our office campus in San Diego sits on the sprawling hill that overlooks Mission Valley. Glass walls, white concrete walkways, tiny potted succulents by every door like they were trying too hard to feel warm. We both worked there. Different departments, different teams. Mia was a partner in strategy, I was infrastructure and operations. It's a big enough firm that people can work on the same floor for months and barely overlap, unless you know where to look. That week had been normal on the surface. Mia was back in go mode. Meetings, blazer, AirPods and all the time. She'd been a little too cheerful at dinner 2 nights before. Poured us wine without being asked. Told a story about someone's dog at the office and laughed like things were light. They weren't. By then, I had already seen enough to know something was happening. I just hadn't caught them in the act. Not yet. That changed on a lunch break I hadn't planned to take. I'd finished a report ahead of schedule and decided to stretch my legs. Walked across campus to Building 3, where they'd just opened a cafe pod with espresso strong enough to make your teeth hurt. As I crossed the courtyard, I glanced at one of the glass meeting pods nestled in the corner. The firm loves these little fishbowls. Circular, mostly soundproof, sealed by a single sliding door. You can't hear anything inside, but you can see everything. And there she was, Mia, sitting inside with Ethan. Ethan. He was on the creative team, young, well-spoken, the kind of guy who wore plain white tees like they were tailored suits. I'd met him once at a conference in New York. He'd shaken my hand and said, "You're the guy behind the curtain." Like it was a compliment. I stopped walking, just stood there, coffee forgotten. They weren't reviewing a pitch. There were no laptops, no whiteboard scribbles, nothing on the table but a half-empty sparkling water and Mia's phone. She was laughing, not the polite office laugh, the real one, head tilted back slightly, hand brushing his arm. He said something and leaned in. She leaned too. Then they kissed. Just like that. Not frantic. Not desperate. Not some adrenaline-fueled slip. It was practiced. Comfortable. Familiar. I didn't move. Couldn't. It lasted all of 5 seconds, but it felt like an hour. She touched his face after. Smiled at him. He rested his hand on hers. They didn't look around. They didn't hide. They weren't afraid of being seen. Which meant this wasn't new. My stomach dropped. And in that moment, all the details from the past few months slammed into place like puzzle pieces I didn't want to solve. Every late meeting, every vague text, every seat setting in the car, every location blip that didn't add up, it all made sense now. And what made it worse? The badge. Each pod has a reservation system. You book it through our internal app. I pulled out my phone, opened the room log, and checked the current reservation. Booked under both their names. For a 90-minute collaboration session. My name wasn't on it. No one else's was. Just them. The building's entry system logs every badge swipe, every door push, every access point. I knew exactly how to check it. After all, I helped build the damn system. And when I pulled up the entry logs later that evening, there it was. Both their badges scanned into the pod at 12:02 p.m. No other entries after that. I stared at the data like it was a report I didn't want to deliver. 12:02 to 1:34. 92 minutes. Alone. She hadn't mentioned a meeting that day. When I'd asked if she wanted to grab lunch, she said she had too much on her plate. "Next week for sure," she'd texted. With a heart emoji. I hadn't even been angry. I believed her. Told myself I was overreacting. That maybe, just maybe, I was imagining things. But now I had it. Proof. Real, indisputable, burned into my memory proof. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't storm into the pod or call her out in the middle of the courtyard. Instead, I walked away, back to my desk, sat in my chair, clicked open a spreadsheet, and stared at the screen while the air conditioning blew down like static. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in that moment. I don't know if it was shock or shame or some combination of both, but all I could feel was this hollow, buzzing numbness. What got me wasn't the kiss. Not really. It was the ease. The way they touched each other like this was routine. Like this was Tuesday. It meant this had been happening for a while. And I'd been in the dark. The man in the mirror back in Austin? Ethan. It had to be. Everything matched. The build, the posture, the timing. She'd gone quiet after that launch, said she was drained from the travel. But she'd still stayed late at the office that week. Said she was on a tight deadline. What deadline includes making out in a glass box during work hours? I don't remember much of the rest of that afternoon. I think I answered emails. Maybe sat in on a Zoom call. Smiled where I needed to. Nodded at the right beats. But my mind kept going back to that pod. That kiss. That goddamn hand on her cheek like she was his. She used to touch my face like that. Later that night, we drove home in the same car. She talked about dinner. Asked if I wanted to try that new Thai place near the harbor. Said something about her team getting good feedback on the new creative direction. I listened. Or pretended to. Kept my face neutral. Kept my voice level. Because I couldn't ask the question. Not yet. Not until I figured out what I wanted to do with the answer. The thing about secrets is they don't stay buried forever. You can pour concrete over them, wrap them in smiles and calendar invites and vague explanations, but eventually, inevitably, they claw their way to the surface. Sometimes they whisper, sometimes they explode, and sometimes they shatter quietly in the middle of a rooftop party in Tampa. It was Connor's birthday. He was one of Mia's close colleagues. Product marketing, West Coast team, always wore loud shirts and smelled like citrus. I'd met him once at a ski retreat in Park City. Back then, he'd shaken my hand with both of his, told me Mia was one of the sharpest minds he'd ever worked with. I remembered liking him. This time, the party was on the top floor of the hotel the firm had booked out for a mid-quarter sink. Rooftop bar, string lights, music playing just loud enough to hide the awkwardness. People clutched cocktails like lifelines. I'd flown in that morning at Mia's request, said it'd be nice to have me there, that I deserved a break, and that I'd get to meet more of the team. I didn't want to go, but I went. By then, I was already drowning in quiet knowing. I had the pod logs, the badge swipes, the memory of Ethan's hand on her waist. I hadn't confronted her yet. I was waiting, watching, gathering, but I knew, and she didn't know that I knew. Not yet, so I played along, put on a blazer, smiled when introduced. She introduced me as Evan, still not my husband, and I stopped keeping count. At some point, that omission had become deliberate. Mia looked radiant that night. Hair down, soft curls, black dress with a low back I hadn't seen before. The kind of dress you don't just pack for business. The kind you wear when you know who's going to be looking. Ethan was there. Of course he was. Standing near the bar in a navy shirt that was too fitted to be accidental, talking with one of the UX leads like he had nothing to hide. I watched him glance toward Mia once, and in that half second, their eyes locked. That look told me everything I needed to know. They weren't worried. They weren't nervous. They thought they were invisible. But I saw it. Everyone did. No one said it. But the silence around them was growing louder. Then Connor grabbed the mic. He'd had just enough tequila to make him sentimental, which meant the speech was inevitable. He banged his glass with a spoon and said, "All right, everybody shut up. I'm about to embarrass myself." Laughter rippled across the rooftop. Mia laughed too, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders, and moved to stand closer to Ethan. Close but not too close, not quite touching. But I saw her angle her body toward him. I saw her shoulders drop, the kind of drop that only happens when someone feels safe. And then Connor started talking. He thanked his team, told a story about his first week at the company, mispronounced a few acronyms for laughs. The kind of stuff people eat up at these events. But then, God help him, he said one sentence too many. "And huge thanks to the people who keep things exciting around here," he said, raising his glass. "Mia and Ethan, my favorite duo. I don't know what you two are working on, but damn, it must be electric." It hit like a G*NSH*T. Silence. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just hollow. A pause. Just long enough. Ethan froze. Mia's smile faltered, just for a beat, before she recovered and let out a too loud laugh. Someone clapped. Someone else coughed. A third person, I think, muttered "yikes" under their breath. I felt my stomach twist. Not from Connor. From her. Because she didn't look at me. She looked away. She took a step. Not toward me, not toward the bar, but away from Ethan, like maybe she thought that would fix something. Like distance could erase implication. I saw her scan the crowd, then me. And in that moment I saw it. Guilt. Real guilt. Not the performative kind. Not the "I'm sorry you're upset" kind. The kind that knows it just got caught. She didn't speak. She didn't laugh again. She didn't even try to explain. And the rooftop kept moving. People shifted conversations. Glasses clinked. Someone turned the music up a little louder, as if drowning something out. But the damage was done. Not just to me, to her. There are moments where everything changes. Not because of what's said, but because of what's felt. That was one of them. From that point on, I stopped existing in the abstract. I wasn't just Evan anymore. I was Evan, the husband. The husband standing on the rooftop while a colleague toasted his wife's affair in public. And everyone knew it. You could see it in how they looked at me. Too much eye contact. Not enough. Nervous glances between sips. Whispers tucked behind hands. People who had been warm at the start of the evening now offered me half smiles and quick exits. The kind of sympathy that smells like smoke after the fires already consumed the house. Ethan tried to disappear. He moved toward the stairs at one point, probably hoping to duck out before anyone pulled him aside. Mia followed him, not immediately but not long after. I didn't go after them. I stayed. I stood near the edge of the rooftop and stared out over the city, letting the breeze hit my face while my thoughts spun in quiet, precise circles. The pain wasn't sharp anymore. It was dull, saturated, heavy like wet concrete. I thought of the first time I met Mia's parents, of the way her mom had called me the solid one. I thought of our wedding, how she'd tucked a note into my jacket pocket that just said, "Don't let me run when I get scared." I thought of the first apartment we shared, the one with no closet doors and a stove that sparked when you looked at it wrong. And I thought about how far we'd come just to collapse here, on a rooftop at someone else's birthday party, with a joke that wasn't meant to be a confession but somehow became one. She came back eventually, found me at the far end of the rooftop, her shawl wrapped tight, like it could shield her from what had just happened. "Hey," she said softly. I looked at her, but didn't speak. She hesitated. That was awkward. I said nothing. She offered a laugh, weak, brittle. Connor always has terrible timing. Still nothing. After a long pause, she added, "It's not what it looked like." I turned toward her, finally. "Yes," I said. "It is." She opened her mouth, closed it again, and for once, Mia, the master of the pivot, the architect of deflection, had no strategy left. So she just stood there, staring at me, and I walked away. The morning after the rooftop, I didn't yell. I didn't slam a door. I didn't ask her who or how long or why she let it get this far. That part of me, the one that needed answers, had already died somewhere between the glass meeting pod and Connor's clumsy toast. Instead, I sat at our kitchen island, sipping coffee while Mia moved around me like nothing had happened. She made eggs, asked if I wanted toast, mentioned her schedule for the day, client check-ins, a pitch rehearsal, drinks with the design lead. I nodded maybe twice, never asked who the drinks were really with. She kissed the top of my head before she left. Her lips barely touched my skin, a gesture of routine, not love. Placeholder. The door closed, and that's when I got to work. Not on revenge, not on chaos, on clarity. The first thing I did was back up every document I had control over. Shared folders, infrastructure permissions, archived emails. My company and Mia's weren't connected at the corporate level, but we collaborated often enough that we had crossover clients, vendors, shared NDAs, even billing systems. She had access to more than she realized. So I changed that. I logged into our infrastructure portal and reviewed every permission she had, every shared login she'd used during joint proposals or pitch decks. Then I revoked them, quietly, no alerts, just subtle reassignments. If she noticed, she'd assume it was a technical error. She wouldn't ask me. Not anymore. Next came the finances. We kept liquid assets in a joint investment account, mostly for travel, emergency expenses, big purchases. Over the years, we'd both contributed equally. But I'd always known where every dollar went. She didn't. That was her blind spot. So I transferred my share, every last cent, into a private trust under my name only. Legally structured, tax compliant, and unbreakable without my signature. I left her portion untouched. This wasn't about taking from her. It was about walling off what was mine before someone else tried to touch it. Then I called our business administrator and asked for updated vendor agreements. Anything with her name, anything co-signed or in review. I didn't give a reason, just said, "Let's take a second look." My tone was neutral, friendly even, but behind the scenes I started replacing her. Not out loud, not in a way that would raise flags, just small moves. One client we had co-managed Virion Systems was due for a Q4 proposal. I met with them over lunch solo. Explained we'd be shifting their point of contact to someone on my team for bandwidth reasons. They agreed. Didn't ask questions. Another account, an NGO we'd been grooming for 6 months, had started showing discomfort with their deliverables. Mia had been the lead. I stepped in, smoothed it over, offered a revised roadmap. They accepted. That gave me leverage. Internally, I drafted a project transition memo. Unofficial. Just notes. I mapped out every contract Mia had touched in the past year, who else had visibility, where conflicts of interest could be proven, especially anything overlapping with Ethan's department. Then I pulled access logs. At first, I didn't think I'd find much, but the overlap was real. Presentation decks she edited with his login. Comment histories with timestamps that didn't match her office hours. Files opened from unregistered IP addresses. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I knew what I was looking for. It wasn't just infidelity. It was collusion. A managing partner, Mia, with operational authority, providing strategic access to someone lower in the hierarchy. And that, in corporate terms, wasn't just bad judgment. It was liability. So I called in an external compliance consultant. Someone I trusted. Someone discreet. I didn't tell them the whole story. Just said, we might have a potential breach of internal ethics. I need documentation. Nothing formal yet. They agreed. Signed an NDA. Began collecting. Meanwhile, Mia kept texting me from the office. Long day. Wanna do sushi tonight? Miss you. Crazy schedule today. Ethan's team's behind again, face with rolling eyes. I never responded. She didn't push. She knew something was shifting, but she didn't know what. That was the only power I had left, knowledge. At night, I began sleeping in the guest room. Told her I had a back issue. Said the mattress was better for my spine. She nodded, gave me a strange look, but didn't ask more. I stopped volunteering details. Stopped sharing weekend plans. Stopped touching her at all. It wasn't punishment. It was preservation. The truth was, I didn't want to explode. I didn't want to be the guy who flips a table or posts *TS or drags everything into public view. I wanted control. And I was getting it. A week later, access to several internal tools stopped working for both Mia and Ethan. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet denials. Permission denied. Insufficient access. They submitted IT tickets. The system flagged the source as under review. They didn't know the review had been triggered by me. That Friday, the board met. I didn't attend the full session, wasn't required, but I knew what was discussed. The compliance consultant had submitted a preliminary report. The summary flagged a potential abuse of role hierarchy, specifically involving a senior strategy partner and a creative team member, both connected through overlapping project metadata, unsanctioned collaboration, and inconsistent documentation. The board didn't act publicly, but internally her access was throttled. Soft lockdown, read-only status on key clients, temporary reassignment of 2 accounts, calendar visibility paused, travel requests flagged. Ethan's calendar was scrubbed altogether. He stopped showing up to Monday stand-ups. No explanation, no farewell email, just gone. Mia came home that night pale and quiet, said she was tired, said she had a headache, said the board was reorganizing responsibilities to streamline client load. I nodded, said nothing. I don't know if she knew, then how much I had seen, how much I had done, but I saw the way her shoulders sagged, the way she checked her phone twice during dinner, even though it never buzzed. And for the first time in a long time I felt lighter, not better, not healed, but no longer drowning. There was no confrontation. There didn't need to be. The damage was already underway, and I had simply opened the door. Ethan resigned quietly. No goodbye, no notice. Mia's files began failing mid-meeting, her permissions restricted. Clients shifted toward my team, and her authority was placed under review. Whispers replaced respect. No scandal, just erosion. Her reputation didn't collapse. It faded, piece by piece. until there was nothing left to salvage. No explosion, just silence. I moved to a quiet lake house in North Carolina, rebuilt my routine, stabilized the business, and handed off client work. Weeks later, Mia sent a letter, regret, reflection, no denial. I didn't respond. There was no point. I had what I needed: peace, space, and ownership of my future. What was broken stayed broken. What remained was mine to rebuild. Alone, steady, and finally clear-eyed.